Welcome back to Wizard Supercoach. Another day, another video, sixth day in a row and still going strong. Now, I'm not even a quarter of a way through this planned streak of videos. So if you haven't already, hit the sub button because, hopefully you don't miss out or whatever. Let's try and get 200 subs by the start of the season, I think. So before the first bounce of round zero, we'll count round zero as the season. Today's video. I did a similar thing with the defenders a few days ago, and now I'm going to do it with the forwards. It is their win average and loss average, so what they score in wins and losses, basically. Now, what this does is it can help us, if we're going to predict like what teams are going to rise and fall, it can kind of help us see which players are safer than others here and what might happen. So, as I've said with all my other videos, these are not to be taken singularly. They pair up with all the other videos, and the info in each video creates a bigger picture, I think. There's no point concentrating on one stat. Now, again, these don't have sub-affected games included or finals. So I'll just get straight into it because it's a pretty straightforward video, really. So at the top here, we got the guys in green. There's not many. This was to be expected, as forwards obviously traditionally score worse in losses. That is the game. But there are a few here that do seem to score better in losses for some reason. And then, the rest is pretty straightforward. So I'll go through and have a chat about most of these players and what I think has caused this and what that might mean for 2025, because that's why we're here. So obviously Parker didn't play much in 24, so not enough really that I would want to include it in this. So I thought it was better to go off his 23 stats. So obviously he's 11 points better off on average in losses there. Now I think that's just purely because he was playing like almost exclusive midfield in 2023. His CBAs were like through the roof. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what that percentage was, but it was really big. So the good thing here though is that if he does score worse in losses, well, he's going to a obviously weaker team, North not being anywhere near as good as Sydney, and that should continue in 2025. So that is a good sign, but at the same time, it's very unlikely that he's going to have that same role with the really high CBAs at North. So I don't think this means too much for him. I mean, most of these players, a lot of it hinges on are they good players or not, I think. So, moving on. Thilthorpe, there wasn't much. Like, he had a small sample size, so there wasn't too much here to include, but I guess it's still a good sign. Like, these guys at the top, there's a bit of safety, I guess, in the pick if they're still able to score in losses. And to be honest, like, the differential is not the biggest problem here. You kind of want to see like how badly they bottom out, I think. 86.2 is not the worst if that's what he was going to cop in losses and stuff. Again, it's a small sample size, so I'm not suggesting that he's actually going to average something like that across a whole season. But, fair few people think the Crom should improve this year. I'm one of them, and if you've been watching, you'd know I'm a Crom nuffy, but all bias aside, and to be honest, I'm probably one of the most pessimistic Crom supporters that there is. So, I think there actually is a good chance that they improve and possibly slip in the 8 this year. So that can only be good, really, for any of these Crom forwards. I guess now is a good time to point out, as always, that the players included here, I haven't included the Crom ones just because of my nuffiness. These players here are all last year's top 10, I believe. This year's top 10 forwards in terms of price, and then everyone that is deemed Supercoach relevant in some way. So not necessarily what I'd pick, but what I see people talking about. So that's why people like Humphrey here are included, who I really don't rate at all. Okay, so moving on. Kennedy, he just played more as a mid, so that explains that one. He doesn't need too many goals to score or anything. I don't think he really scores many. The fact that Carlton, them and the Bulldogs aren't too differently matched, I don't think it means much for him. I think if you watch yesterday's video, there's other stats that matter more for him. This isn't really too relevant. So Keys was the big one from yesterday's video. This is why he's included in today's video with that enormous post-buy average. Now, I think that him scoring slightly better in the losses here, it's just because he works high up the ground, like high work rate. He's always had it. He's an absolute heart and soul type player, but yeah, it just... I don't know what to say about him. Like, I'm still stumped. I don't really know how he scored so well in the second half of the year. From the eye test, not much changed, so I don't know why he's possibly scoring better in the losses other than that high work rate. Maybe he gets a lot of tackles, something like that. I'm going to keep looking into it, but I haven't cracked it yet. Now, it's worth saying that in that post-buy run, he actually averaged 127 in wins and 90 in losses. So while that's a pretty big differential of 37 points there, the 90's not bad at all. Like, even if that was where he was bottoming out in that second half of the year, that's still going to put him pretty high on this year's list of forwards. So again, that's pretty bloody big. If you think that the Crom are going to improve, like I said with Thilthorpe, then there's a good chance that Key's average actually could increase here. Just, if what I'm trying to say is, if we look at his post-buy run, because if you were picking him, that's the only reason why. You're going to ignore that first half of the season of 2024. So yeah, you could be looking at some massive scores here if Crom continue to improve. Rochelle, Sanders, Wilson, they're all, not really statistically relevant. I think they're pretty close to breaking even on wins and losses. McRae is going to a likely weaker team. I think St Kilda this year won't be as strong as the Dogs in 2024. So this could work in his favour if you're really going to look into this, where he's 10 points better off. But I think McRae's season was just a shit show from Bevo and whatever else going on. So I wouldn't read too much into this. I think with him, it's probably more role based at the end of the day rather than wins and losses. Mackay here, he's just one of your classic key forwards, scores better in wins, worse in losses. Everyone gets why that is. Philippou, so a bit like Keys, if you're going to pick him, you'd only be concentrating on his post-buy, and that was only 4 games. So if we concentrate on just the post-buy, he actually averaged 96 in the 2 wins and 93 in the 2 losses. So that's really good. Like, it's nice and consistent. The win-loss thing doesn't affect him too much. So if you expect St Kilda maybe like mid-table or something, well, that's fine. It's not going to matter either way. Toby Green, he spends a lot of time deep forward now, so, that explains the starting to get into these bigger differentials here. But I also think that GWS winning kind of depends on him playing well. He's one of those kind of players. He's not the only one at GWS. Like, there's Whitfield and Hogan, but he's definitely one of the most important. So, if he's not firing, then they don't seem to get the win. I think Rankin as well is similar to Green in that he's really important to the Crom winning game. So when he plays really well and he's trotting out these bigger scores, then, they usually win, but he drops off a little bit in the losses, and that's fine because, again, like, this 97.6 here is fairly respectable. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is it's going to come into play later in the video. But yeah, as I've said before, if Crom improve, well then, Rankin actually could go up from here. I think the bigger question is just on his body though. As I said before, Humphrey was just included because I've heard people talking about him for a breakout. I don't see it myself. The numbers don't back it up. This doesn't back it up. Largely irrelevant, but, out of fairness, he's there. Luke Jackson. So again, I don't think he's terribly relevant this year with the flex change and stuff. He's got the 14-point differential here, so he plays mostly key forward these days, so that's kind of self-explanatory there. But also he got his highest scores earlier in the year without Darcy, and Fremantle were better in the first half of the year than the second, So that kind of explains that one. Yeah, there's a tight correlation there actually, because his post-buy scores that I mentioned in the last video were also 14-point drop-off there when Fremantle started to lose more games. So yeah, interesting on that one. But Fremantle look likely to contend this year, or at least a lot of people think so. So again, maybe his points will jump up if they win a lot more games. Curnow, Spud, I'm traumatized by him, so I'm not going to give him any time. Beware here with Liam Baker. Like, Richmond was shit last year, obviously, and he's gone to West Coast, who I don't think are going to be winning a lot of games either this year. So, this isn't really the pick. I think he's just too inconsistent. It's just him in a nutshell. Every statistical category, he is inconsistent. Darcy, classic key forward. The Dogs, I think, should do slightly better though this year. So maybe, there's some upside here. I think he'll just have the natural growth and stuff anyway, and should have a stronger season. Caleb Daniel, I wouldn't pay too much attention to this at all. Similar to McRae, like, there was a lot of shit going on last year with his season. There wasn't many non-sub affected games to pick from, so small sample size here. North aren't going to win a hell of a lot of games, I think. So this kind of goes in his favour, although I think it is a bit skewed. At the end of the day, the reason you're picking him is because he's going to have that North ball role, and we know for a fact that scores. Like, if Fisher can score respectively in that, then I think Daniel's going to have no problem. So again, don't worry about this, just lock him in. Dylan Moore. So there's a fair differential here. Starting to get into the really big differences now. And this is where we start to see some danger signs, I think. So Moore, obviously, as a forward, he's not going to score better, you'd think, in the losses. I think it's a case with him where he's probably like a Rankin and a Green. Like, if he's playing really well, Hawthorn play really well, but his scores are very tightly correlated with Hawthorn last year with their rise and fall. Probably not the right words for it, but like, their first half of the season was pretty shit, and then they were really good in the second half of the year. So if you remember back to yesterday's video with the pre and post buy scores, Moore had that big differential in the pre and post. He did a lot better in the post buy when Hawthorn started winning. So I think that's all that is. And look, again, if you think Hawthorn are going to be a contender this year, like a lot of people do, this shouldn't really worry you at all. But if I'm honest, I think Hawthorn, I think they overachieved this year, and that coaches would have put a bit of effort into trying to work them out so that, they're not going to have the element of surprise this year. I think they caught everyone off guard because no one would have really been taking them seriously until the end. By then it was probably too late, but yeah, I don't think they're going to be quite as good as people think. So I don't know, maybe he may drop off a little bit. Maybe he just stays where he is. I don't know. He's a great player though, so he's probably still going to score okay regardless. Daniels, I don't think is very relevant. It's going to be pretty hard for him to back up last year. Very unlikely. Bailey Smith. So I've included 2023 here. Obviously, he didn't play last year. Now, this is a big differential. So that's one thing. It's minus 24 in the losses. But what is really bad here, I think, is that we're now starting to drop. If you look at all these other players, most of them, like most of the good players, they're still getting a half decent average. Like, if they got an 80 or something one week, it's not going to kill you just because their team lost. You're going to think, oh, that's a bit disappointing, but, they'll even it out kind of thing. Smith is serving up 67 on average in losses here. And if he's getting that in a game, like one week, you're going to be pretty pissed off. It's going to feel like it's ruined your week kind of thing if you're taking it seriously. So I think this is yet another reason not to pick him. And I'm not cherry picking stats here at all. I think there's too many risks with him. That's the problem. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you think. Like, is this another nail in the coffin for the Smith pick, you think? Because I think it is. Geelong should still be pretty strong though, so there's that safety. But keep in mind that the Bulldogs were pretty strong, I guess, and you want players that they've got like that higher floor kind of score, and this just ain't it if that's what he's going to be putting out in losses. So Jeremy Cameron again, classic key forward, same as Hogan. Bolton, I think he should score well because Fremantle will do better, or should do better. Certainly going to do better than Richmond did last year. We know that. So it shouldn't be too much of a worry. But again, the worry is at the moment that he's not training in the midfield group at all. So we know that he needs CBAs to score like a premium, which is what you need him to be at that price. And if he's not getting the CBAs, he's not going to do it. So again, less about the win-loss average here and more on the role. If he gets the CBAs, he should be fine. Still an alright pick, I guess, but yeah, very, very risky as we start to get down here now, I think. Probably no less risky than Horne-Francis right here. I know Simpkin obviously has the bigger difference here, but Simpkin is nowhere near as popular a pick as Horne-Francis. And to be honest, he's not as appealing either for a simple reason. But on Horne-Francis, at first I suspected that this large difference was because maybe he was like, whenever Port were losing or finding it tough, Kenny would throw him forward in hopes that he'd spark something and get some goals. Because, he has got that ability to score those late goals and stuff. But when I had a look, he actually averages slightly more CBAs in losses than wins, which means he's not going forward in the losses as much as he is in the wins. So we know that he like Bolton, he needs the CBAs to score better. So yeah, it's definitely worrying there. My theory on why his win average is so high is because, and I haven't really been able to back this up yet, as I haven't looked into it enough, but I think that, yeah, they're inflated because he gets late goals in tight wins and tight losses. So obviously, tight games you score more points for if you're scoring at the end of the game. Most of you probably know that already, but I'm assuming there's some people that watch these videos that are new to Supercoach, so got to cater to everyone. So if Port, as I predict, are going to drop off a bit, and I'm not saying they're going to be like horrible or anything this year, but if they drop to maybe middle pack, where I think they will be, maybe in that like 7th down to 10th kind of range, maybe somewhere there, does this affect him? Does it, does his average drop, and by how much? Like, does this put you off? So like the Smith one, let me know in the comments what you think. Is this another nail in the coffin for him as a pick? I'm seeing some people start to jump off him a bit. Probably not for the same reasons that I'm listing here. But, he's still in my team for now because I'm just struggling to see a lot of really good picks in the forward line, which is usually the problem. There's some here that I do like, but I just don't have the balls to pick them. So, yeah, let me know what you think about him. And so finally, there's Simpkin. Now, small sample size really, because he played in only 3 wins. And this is a pretty simple one. So in those 3 wins, he got 65 to 70% CBAs in all 3. And obviously those early losses, he was getting none. So that's why he's got the big differential there. His scoring obviously is linked to the role only. He needs the CBAs. If he's not getting them, he's not worth a pick at all. So yeah, very straightforward with Simpkin. So that's about it. Yeah, as I said, 6th video out, so I'm surprised I've gotten this far, but here we are. Hope you got something out of the video, and again, these videos, the info in them should be used together rather than as, a singular piece of info, because again, it never tells the whole story. The AFL is just, it's got too many variables, and we can never cover it all, but I think by looking at certain things, you can kind of get a bit of a picture. and uncover a few things. So again, thanks for watching. Keep commenting and liking and all that stuff. I'm really enjoying that still, all the comments and stuff. And again, hit that sub button if you haven't already. I should see you in tomorrow's video.